I would now like to call to order the last of the year, December 13th meeting of the Albany Planning and Zoning Commission. Would you please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, could we please have a roll call?
Yes, Commissioner Donaldson.
Here.
Commissioner Jennings.
Here.
Commissioner Minotti.
Here.
Chair Geeson Fields.
Here. Okay. And our next item up is ex parte communication disclosures. Are there any disclosures from the commission?
No.
Okay. No ex parte communications. And then next up is our consent calendar. We have a full consent calendar, but we have a couple of items which are going to be continued to a date certain, I believe. And so I just want to make you aware of that if you're here for planning application PA 17-067, design review for a second story addition at 721 Albert, or if you are here for PA 17-051, design review for a second story rear addition at 1049 Kains Avenue. Both of those two projects on the consent calendar will be continued to a date certain. And so we have our consent calendar. The consent calendar are items considered to be routine and or administerial. Thus, everything on the consent calendar is considered and voted on by a single vote of the commission, unless an item is pulled from the consent calendar by someone in the public audience or a commissioner on the commission. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to pull an item from the consent calendar? We have, besides the two projects that are being continued to a date certain, we have the design review for a second story rear addition at 622 Curtis in the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting minutes. Is there a commissioner who would like to pull an item?
Yeah, I'd like to pull that one. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Which one did you pull?
622 Curtis. Mm-hmm.
I had a comment on the minutes 5-1 for the 25th.
Sure.
Okay.
I guess we will, if you'd like, are there any other comments on the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting minutes from October 25th? Okay, I guess, would you mind just providing your edits and we can still do a
Sure.
group motion for everything else?
There was an item, it was 5-5 for 1108 Curtis. In my notes, I put down that Commissioner Donaldson had to abstain from that one.
Correct. Yeah. Which date are you looking at?
1025. So if you look at page 5 at the top.
I know. I saw that too. If you go on to page 5, then it says there that I moved the consent calendar, that someone moved the consent calendar, but I abstained. Let me see here. Motion to approve consent calendar 5-1, 5-3, and 5-6. And I voted on 5-1 and 5-3 only. And so I had the same concern when I was reading the minutes. And
So just
I
on the
think
top of page 5, I just think you need to put him, it's motion passed, it says 4001, it's probably 3011, and then you couldn't have.
Yeah, you're right. I see what you're saying. For motion passed,
Well, I'm sorry, are we talking about 1108 Curtis, or are we talking about 735 Cornell?
735 Cornell I had to abstain on.
Right, but so
get those
he's
wrong?
talking about
So
Curtis.
the motion would have passed by 3.
Wait, I was talking about, I believe, 1108 Curtis. Did you not abstain from that one?
No,
Okay, so the record is correct.
that record is correct on that one.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, well, okay, so we have that resolved.
But,
Is that-
oh yeah, there were 4 votes for 735 Cornell. Okay, that's correct then. Yeah, all right.
Okay, so we will pull item 5-5, PA 17-073.
Yeah, I have some brief thoughts on that.
Perfect. Design review for second story rear addition at 622 Curtis.
Right.
Is there a motion, and as I said, 5-3, 721 Talbot, that will be continued to a date certain of January 10th, 2018, pending submittal of design review revisions, and 5-4, PA 17051 or 1049 Kains will be continued to a date certain of January 10th, 2018.
Oh, actually, Kains is going to have to be renoticed. It's going to go on the January 10th agenda, but we will be sending out new postcards.
Okay, so it will be continued to a date certain of January 10th, and it will be renoticed to the surrounding neighborhood. Is there a motion, is there a motion on the,
I'll move to approve the consent calendar, which are the continuations in the minutes. Mhm.
wonderful. There's a motion, is there a
Second.
second? Okay, it's been seconded by Commissioner Minotti. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye,
Okay,
okay.
so those have been approved as discussed, and then our last item up from the consent calendar is 622 Curtis.
Okay. I don't think, is there anyone in the audience, do you have any speaker cards on this?
I don't have
No.
any speaker cards, but the
No.
applicants are.
Okay, the applicants are here. I see Howard is here. So maybe I can just cut right to my issue, and we don't have to do a staff report and all of that. If you could pull up the plans on the screen, and in particular, the front elevation, I think.
The proposed elevation?
The front the east elevation, the front elevation, yeah. Can do that. Okay, I wanted to, yeah. Okay, yeah, I was a little bit, these are simply design review comments that I want to make, and maybe Howard will have some comments on my comments, I'm not sure. I was a little bit bothered by the cantilever coming out at the back of the building on the south side there above the garage. Aesthetically, it kind of was a little bit jarring. I looked at the plans, and it's a very narrow house, and it would be hard to get the upstairs corridor in and have acceptable bedroom widths. If we got rid of that, I thought about that. So my thinking is, anyway, maybe some architecturally designed brackets at the bottom to sort of tie that in to the wall below it would make it look a little less jarring and not standing out quite as much. If anyone had thought about that, it's a really nice, it's a not very nice house, and I think the addition is a very nice design. It's very attractive, and it's a very good project. But that was one aspect that bothered me on it. And then another thought I had, looking below that on the north elevation, south, look at I think you can scroll down or find the north elevation. So, yeah, right there. At the rear, those two bedrooms in the new addition those two windows in the new addition are right into a bedroom. And it would seem to me, looking at the bedroom design from the inside, that the bed will probably go right between those two windows. And I would recommend to the applicant or the architect that instead of having full-size long windows there, that it might be better to have a single high window above the bed, above that space where the bed would be, for privacy reasons, both for the occupants of the house, and for potential neighbors next door if they expand or can see up into that. I think it would just otherwise, if the bed is right there, you would be seen in the window every time you went to bed. And that would mean that blinds would be down all the time, probably. So I think it'd be better to have a long, high window up there on that design, and it'd be better for the privacy of the occupants and for and for the neighbors. And my last comment, I had a question or a comment on the landscape plan, and there are currently 3 big shrubs, bush shrubs, shrub-like trees that are right in front of the front window. And I think they're camellias. The plant list calls for pink winter currant at those. So my question is, are those plants going to be replaced? And if so, will the will they be lower because the current plants obstruct the picture window in front of the house, which I think doesn't meet our design guideline of the front of the house should be the sort of gift to the street kind of thing. The camellia bushes that are, the way they're pruned and everything, they block the front window. So anyway, and maybe Howard, would know about what those plants are and whether they're talking about keeping those camellias or replacing them with a lower shrub. Or maybe, Chris is here now, he might know.
I think they're all being replaced with lower.
It looks to you like they're all being replaced, yeah. Okay.
I can start. So you had 3 comments. I'll start with that last one first.
Okay.
The 3 plants that are there are indeed camellias.
are,
There used to be some lower planting, and my understanding is that you had some advice from the police department that advised you to get rid of the lower plantings because it was just simply a place for people to hide.
Yeah.
So in the process of doing that, that kind of left them what I would call kind of leggy. You know, there
Yeah,
were
they
a lot
are
of
leggy,
foliage high and nothing low, and they don't look very good. So we did have some landscape advice on this, and the advice was to remove those and
Okay.
with new plantings, and indeed they would be lower so that you actually could see out the picture window.
That's great. That answers my question and satisfies me on that
Yeah.
issue. All right.
Now, for
Okay,
the other
on the
2?
other issues, go ahead.
Okay. The cantilever, indeed, you're right. The house is narrow, and without the cantilever, the bedrooms would not particularly work. I have no problem with brackets. I think brackets would be fine. We can do the brackets.
Okay.
Good idea, actually. And I've also conferred with the owners, and your suggestion on the bedroom, which would be the north side, they're fine with that.
Okay. All right.
I have one comment. I'm just curious on your thoughts, Howard. So my one concern was just the rear deck, and because it's elevated, that, well, I guess, and part of it is answered because there's been no sort of neighbor correspondence complaining about it, but I was worried that because it's elevated, when they're on that rear deck, it'll give them sort of a heightened viewpoint to look into the neighbor's yard or windows. And so one question was, have you thought about stepping down the deck so as you come out the back, you go down several steps to kind of bring it closer to grade?
We did have some discussions about that. The problem with doing that is they anticipate spending a lot of time having some meals out there. They thought going up and down the steps would be a little burdensome. So in the end, we settled on a pretty much 4-level deck.
Okay. 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 That was my only thought. And as I said, since none of the neighbors have expressed any concern with that, I guess I will leave that be. So, thank you.
Okay.
Are there any other questions, comments for the applicant or their architect?
Okay. With that, then, I'll move approval of planning application 17073, design review for a second-story addition at 622 Curtis, with a couple of suggested modifications we've made tonight, including adding brackets below the cantilevered addition on the south side, and modifying the window configurations in the upstairs bedroom and the new addition.
Wonderful.
Okay?
There's been a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, great. There's been a motion and a second by Commissioner Kent. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye?
Okay, your project has been approved with the conditions as discussed by Commissioner Donaldson. Otherwise, there's a 14-day appeal period, so please do not make any permanent decisions or moves until after that 14 days is over. Otherwise, it has been approved. Thank you. Okay, with that, I will close out our consent calendar, and we'll now move on to the public comment period. The public comment period is available for anyone desiring to address the commission on an item that is not on our agenda. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. Under the Brown Act, the commission can only receive your comments and defer them to a later date to be included on the agenda. Otherwise, staff can answer any general questions, but we cannot directly comment. Is there anybody who would like to address the commission on an item that is not on our agenda tonight? Okay, seeing no one, I will close the public comment period and move on to our action items, or one action item, I should say. Planning application 16-094, design review and conditional use permit for a second-story addition at 1131 Evelyn. If you'd like to speak, ma'am, please feel free to give your card to either Ann Hirsch or Christopher Tan. And if we could please have a presentation on this.
Yes, once again, this is planning application 16094, design review and conditional use permit for a second-story addition at 1131 Evelyn. Some background on the property. The subject property is a 3,100 square foot lot with 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, 1,109 square foot home built in 1920. City records show the following permitted work done to the property, including a bathroom remodel, kitchen remodels, rewiring, re-roofing, and a garage demolition in May of 1999. Here's a street view of the property as it looks today. Background. The home has an existing unpermitted bedroom on the second level measuring 267 square feet in area that does not satisfy building code standards. Project request. The applicant is requesting design review approval for a 595 square foot second-story addition and a conditional use permit to extend the existing non-conforming north wall vertically. The new second story will be a total of 862 square feet and includes a new master suite, family room, bathroom, and 2 additional bedrooms. This will result in a 4-bedroom, 2.5 bathroom, 1,768 square foot home with a maximum height of 25 feet. Previous commission review. On June 28, 2017, the commission reviewed the project and expressed concerns about the following: adding windows on the second-story north wall to allow for more light and break up the proposed blank wall. The second-story north wall shall be either directly above the existing non-conforming north wall at the ground level or setback 3.1 feet to be compliant with setback regulations. Refinement to the front facade should include modifying the picture window to be similar in proportion and design with the proposed second story. Show a more contemporary front door to match the proposed architecture. A landscape plan should be modified to match the survey, and landscaping should be contemporary to match the home design as well. Window trim throughout was proposed, was recommended, and to remove the existing chimney as it crosses the property line, and to also specify railing materials. Design refinement. The applicant has modified the front facade windows, aligned the second-story north wall with the ground floor north wall, modified the front door, changed the guardrail from stucco to open metal, eliminated the existing chimney, and modified the landscape plan to be contemporary and to be redrawn and to fit within the property lines. Here is an existing elevation of the property, front elevation. Here was what was presented to you at the last meeting. And here's what's proposed to you today. And then just a quick before and after. Conditional use permit. Pursuant to section 2100.030D of the Albany Municipal Code, a conditional use permit is required for a vertical extension of a non-conforming wall vertically. Residential site regulations require side setbacks to be 10% of lot width, and in this case, it's 3.1 feet. A conditional use permit is being requested to allow the vertical extension of the existing non-conforming north wall. The non-conforming wall measures 0.69 feet from the property line at its closest point and 0.9 feet at its furthest point. Parking. No off-street parking is provided by the property currently. The applicant is proposing to remove the accessible ramp, and provide 2 off-street parking spaces in the side yard. And here's a photo of the existing parking, or where it would go. And here's it in plan view. And then here is the modified landscaping. Correspondence is received. 1 neighbor correspondence was received in July after the initial commission hearing and in response to the initial submittal. The correspondence expressed concerns about project design and landscaping. No other correspondences have been received since then. The project is categorically exempt from CEQA. Recommendation. Staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission provide feedback to the applicant and staff. Draft findings and conditions of approval are provided should the commission decide to take action. We've included these 2 special conditions as well, that the applicant shall work with staff to refine the complete building floor area ratio as the proposed project exceeds the maximum FAR by 13 square feet. And the second one being the proposed ground floor bedroom shall be modified to provide compliant means of egress per code or be eliminated and be used for purposes other than sleeping quarters. That's it.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any questions from the commission of staff about this project?
I have a question for staff. So you indicated in the staff report that the design was modified to make the north wall aligned with the existing non-conforming wall, so the addition would be aligned rather. And it sounds like that was a change from what was proposed previously?
Yes.
Could you refresh me on how it was presented previously and how it changed?
Yeah, so it wasn't previously it was proposed that it wasn't directly above the ground floor north wall, but it wasn't exactly 10% of the lot width.
I see.
It's kind of in between there, so now we've made them choose either or, and
Okay.
they decide to align it with the ground story wall.
Okay. And then my other question, I was just wondering if you could expand on the recommendation regarding ingress and egress to that ground floor bedroom?
Yeah,
What the situation is? And
we reviewed the project with our director here, and one thing we missed or realized towards the end is that the ground floor window, which is right near the ground floor bedroom, which is right near the kitchen, that wall is on the property line, and the window is proposed there too. And in order to have a window there, it would have to be fire rated, which means it's inoperable, and therefore egress is not provided.
And so has there been any sort of resolution of that or proposed way to address that?
It was kind of caught a little last minute as far as when the applicant could do the modifications in time for this hearing.
Okay.
So we've just placed that as a special condition.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? No, and then also, just for my own quick edification, could you just flip back to the previous proposed front? Okay. Okay. Thank you.
What is the FAR on this again? This was,
0.5.
It went up to the max at 5.5. It actually exceeds it a little bit as it's presented to
A
you.
little bit over, I think.
Yeah, so that's why we placed the first special condition of approval as well.
Unless there are any other questions,
I have a lot of comments, but not questions.
we will get to the comment period, I promise. Okay, and with that, I would ask if the applicant would like to present your project to the commission, either providing us any additional information that might help us understand why you chose the design you did, or just information that you think might be helpful to us.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This design has several changes from the last one. Mainly is the front. We line up all the windows so it looks a little more details. And also, we put the planter in the front to soften up the bottom of the house. We omit some window because it's too close to the property line on second floor on the left-hand side. As far as the egress window for the bottom, I just look at it now. We can probably put the window in the back of that. Next to the powder room, we can probably put the egress window over there. That may make it work for the egress. You know, facing the backyard rather than to the property line.
Yeah, I
You
think
said,
that,
you said in the closet?
no, I think he was saying putting that window, moving it from that wall that it is to the wall that's shared with the powder room, so that it would look into the backyard.
That would take care of the egress.
Just have to make sure, because that, hopefully you'll have enough width to get the proper size window in there. That's,
If we do a open up kind of window, casement, that'll work. I would probably leave the window the way it is now on that wall.
okay.
Because we need window for the detail.
Keep
The
that.
plan is right behind you. Will you point out to me sort of what, okay, show us which window you're looking at, and move the window,
Egress window here,
okay?
okay?
Does that work? Can that work, or is that still,
That would work because that wall is perpendicular to the property
so
line.
it's okay if it's perpendicular to the property line? Okay, all right.
I'd still keep this window for the detail.
Yeah.
And if we need to do a rated window, we can do a rated window.
Okay,
Okay.
Yeah.
okay, all right. I understand now, thank you.
Yeah. So other than that, design is pretty much same thing as last time. It's a modern home. If you look at next door home is also pretty modern. If you look at the front facade. And so that's why we choose the little more modern design rather than the craftsman that was there before.
Okay.
And we changed the landscaping a little bit to a little more modern. Basically, it's planters and some concrete to make it a little more useful. Other than that, I don't have any more comment.
Okay.
Yeah.
On that same bedroom we've been talking about with the window there, I don't see a closet in that room. Does that make it a
No,
bedroom? Or
there is.
can you call it a bedroom? The closet is there.
Underneath the stairwell.
Oh, yeah, I do. Okay, my plans are small. I missed that. Okay, that's good. I can see that. That's
Not a
underneath
big
the stairwell. That'd be a good closet, sure.
Try to utilize every
Sure.
square foot.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple questions. Can you bring the landscape plan up? So in the back of the property, looks like you call it a planter box. It looks like it's a profile. I'm not quite sure what's going on there. Planter box and the plant's on the side of it. Is that like a drawing of a section of the lying down, or is that supposed to be a planned section of the planter box?
Basically, what we do is we just mix some wooden planter box and plant on top of it.
Plant in it, right?
Huh?
Okay, so those plants are intended to be inside the box, not on the
On
side
the
of it.
inside the box, yes.
And then, so where those plants are located, what's going there? Just,
The what?
so the way you've drawn it, you have you've done it almost like it's a weird kind of side view.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And you have the horse tail in section on the side of the planter, not in the planter. So where the horsetail's drawn, what are you going to be planting there?
Is this whole area going to be a
area is,
planter box?
it's a planter, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
No, it says the existing trees are going to be in the planter box.
Are these existing trees?
No, we're going to put some new trees there. I'm sorry.
All that is existing.
That's a
Says
mistake.
existing.
Where is it? Couple other questions. So when I think, again, I don't remember the other design, but if we talked about being more contemporary, if that was translated into more concrete, I'm sorry, that wasn't really my hopes. But now that you have this, you have these large squares, those look like they're about, I don't know, what, 10 by 10 or 8 by 8, or those are pretty big squares. They're not pavers, but they're called it as pavers. So those are just concrete pours?
Custom pavers, painted and stamped colors, and then in between those will be sods, so you see those dots, those are all sods, and then you have grass to kind of break it apart. It's gonna be a different color from the driveway.
Okay.
All right, but you're not going to bring those huge things in, you're going to pour them in place? Pour it in place? Yeah. Okay, got it, all right, all right. So just a labeling
to the
issue.
microphone.
Okay, so, oh, sorry.
No, as I say, if you, I'm glad that you're adding, no, I just need you to come up to the microphone when you speak because we're recording this. So I'm glad that you're commenting. I just want you to come up if you are.
Yeah, I have some more questions, so come on up, so if you can respond to the landscape.
That's her design.
Okay, got it. That's why you didn't know.
We try to make it as contemporary because originally the old design was like very vague. I think you wanted more like details and we kind of like all together thought about like how we can kind of make this a very like nice contemporary urban kind of backyard feel. So that's how like you have like the planter box that will come in and they're going to be custom built and stained and they're going to be pretty high. I would like to say at least 3 feet high. And with all the grass and shrubs, and then you have like custom concrete stamped, and in between those lines will be like more of like a custom wood chips that will have like different color to pop out the gray with the brown, and then you have like the green space, which is the grass area here. And, you know, you have the deck, and then after that, it would just be a driveway. So we try to bring in more colors into the backyard, and also the front, too.
Okay. I don't, you know, it's your design, you can, you know, I don't want to control your design, but I think, you know, the planters are very expensive. You sure you want to do that? See, when you plant right in the ground, so it's.
Well,
you know,
we
usually-
wanted to satisfy.
Well, that's what I mean, that's what I'm worried, that my
Response.
comment was misinterpreted and it's causing you a lot of expense
It's
for no
okay.
reason.
I think.
Because I don't think the planters are, in urban space are necessary because the planting needs to be protected, people are walking over, or they're on concrete. But in this case, your backyard, you plant right in the ground, so you don't really need the planters, unless you want it to block or screen something, or,
I think it'll actually make the backyard a little bit more like an oasis. So even though it may cost a little bit more, I think it'll actually look much
if
better
that's,
than
okay, if it's
before.
part of your vision, okay. So a couple other comments, I had the agave right next to the entrance, that can be a kind of a, you know, if you fall on that, that's very spiky plants, you might think twice about having it right at the steps, if you kind of
We'll
stumble.
make sure it's cleaned out and like monitored and mowed.
Well, no, you have a big, the agave is, the tenuana is kind of a big spiky plant. It's like, you're not going to mow it. It's going to be, there's the needles on the end of those things. So you be careful about what you're putting right next to your
Got it.
walking area.
Okay.
On the street side, I'm just not quite sure, not just the street side, but the north and south, I'm not sure why the plants are so far spaced apart. I mean, you have this big planting strip, and you have 3 little 1-gallon plants in there. And what's the rest of it? I guess
Well,
mulch.
There's going to be planters right against the window, so we want to leave some space so you can actually do a walk.
Oh, that's a planter next to the window. Okay,
Yeah.
now that helps me.
Yeah.
I understand now what that
I
is.
didn't want
Okay.
to like block it to where you have to kind of
Got it.
climb over.
Okay. So then what is that? When it says you have a little symbol, it says 3S5, but there's no symbols there, so that's just going to be mulch?
Those would just be like really nice plants, like higher bushes. We don't know exactly, but it'll be like just a nice, I would say no more than 2 to 3 feet, kind of like shrubs. Are you talking about these 3 here?
Oh, I have a comment on that too, but no, I'm talking right in front of the planter, right there. You have this, you have the lawn, and then you have a space, then you have your planter box. And what's in that space? You have one symbol in it.
The symbol where? Can you point that out?
This symbol right there that says 3S,
In a,
3S5 1G.
Do we have?
can I see that pointer?
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. So, right there, you have one symbol. Oops. One symbol, but you have this whole planter strip. So is that intended to be all the way down through here, or then you have another?
Well, we're gonna leave that open because of the planter box.
Okay, so it's open. What is it, when you say open, what do you mean? What is on that spot?
Nothing's gonna be there, just lawn.
Okay, so lawns, the edge of the lawn stops here. Your intent is that the lawn's going to go all the way to the planter. Because it has the edge of the lawn. That's, the plan, I can't read the plan. It's just telling me lots of, what your description doesn't really fit with the plan, so I can't really, you know.
So that probably would be a typo. So pretty much there's gonna be a planter box right in front of the window. And then anything beyond that will just be lawn. And in the pathway by the door entrance, there'll be just a couple of plants.
Just here, that's,
And all that, beyond that would just be grass.
this will be all lawn. This will be 3 plants, and the rest of it's going to be mulch, and then you have planting there. And then you have a strip here, it's going to be lawn right here, though it's not labeled. And then you have one plant right there, right on the edge of the lawn, and it's the same plant as, the same plant? No, it's a different plant, okay, same symbol. All right, so then down here, we have just 4 plants that are spaced about 8 feet apart, and then nothing the rest of the way. And then up here, the same situation. You scroll up just a little bit.
Scroll.
Chris.
Chris, can you scroll a little bit there?
We have 4 plants in a big gap. Is there, what's here? Why is there a gap there? And then another 4 plants, and then
It'll just be mulch.
mulch.
Those are what?
It'll be
Salvias, I think.
Okay.
I think those are. Okay, I think I understand it.
I'm sorry, could you say who you are, and are you the owner, or you're you're doing the landscape work, the landscape architect? Okay, and probably you should say your name so we have it for the record, too, to the microphone, yeah.
Lawn ha.
Lan Ha. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
You're not a landscape, you're not a landscape architect. You're your
Designer.
garden plants or something.
I just design landscape. I'm not a professional. I do it here and there, just go on magazines and Google stuff, and just kind of came up with this idea.
Okay. I think you have a vision. I just don't know if I can understand
I
it from
have
the graphic.
photos, if I can email it to
That
you.
would actually would help if you
Yeah, I
had
can
that sort of thing.
email, because the drawing is, I'm not a professional, so
Right, I think you're
I
struggling
don't
with it.
have all those AutoCAD, but I definitely could email you guys an image of like kind of how it would look like.
Not sure if,
I guess depending on the outcome of.
Okay.
yeah.
of
Yeah,
this,
let's
we'll
wait and see.
But thank you for your clarification.
Yeah,
I
that's
greatly
good.
appreciate it.
That's good.
Okay, and I guess unless there's anything else the applicant would like to say about the project, I'm going to now.
Can I ask a question of the applicant or the architect? Okay. I was wondering if you could comment on the setback issue. So it is, the north wall, I understand, is proposed to, or the current north wall is very close to the property line, like less than a foot. And the proposal is to extend that non-conforming setback up. So understanding that the previous direction from staff was to look at either conforming with the setback or aligning the wall. I'm just wondering if you could talk a little about whether you looked at conforming with the setback. And of course, so I understand you get more square feet if you extend the line up, but are there any other considerations we should take into account when we're considering whether to approve an extension of that wall that's really close to the property line?
From what I understand, planning code saying that we can do the addition on the vertical rather than, for the non-conforming wall, we can do just add on top of it.
So I guess I'm just asking if did you look at trying to make the wall conform, and can you talk at all about,
Well,
how you arrived at this proposal? Because it is, I mean, to be clear, it is something we need to approve, so I'm asking you to help us out in, in making the decision.
Understand, what happened, the house is already pretty narrow. So if we chop any more, it wouldn't be able to fit the square foot in.
What is the width?
For the owner's need. The width is only 20-some feet.
Okay.
Let's see. The second floor is 21 feet. 21 feet, 4 inches. So we chop 3 inches, 3 feet off, that's like 17 feet. So it's, even 20 feet is not that wide. So that's why we didn't consider to
Okay.
the
How
setback.
wide is the lot?
Lot is only 31 foot.
31. Okay.
There's a little mistake on the agenda saying it's 5,000 square foot, but it's only 3,100 square foot lot.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a narrow lot, small lot.
31, yeah.
Another way is we can probably shift the house on second floor to give us the 3-foot setback, but to kind of look odd on the cantilever. If we cantilever in the parking lot, on the parking side, it doesn't look that good.
Thank you.
So that's why we hope that will
Okay.
justify, yes.
I had a question about the second floor with
Yes.
the windows. I don't know if, Ann, this is a question for you, and I know it doesn't have the setback, we have issues with fire rating, but are there any types of windows that I'm just concerned about the massing on the,
Yeah, we've allowed block glass because it's fire rated, but it also allows light to enter the interior.
so I guess I was just concerned on the second floor that it's just a big blank wall. Had you thought about like block glass, at least in the staircase area?
We certainly can do that. If that's,
Unless somebody has a better suggestion, but
No, I think I had same thoughts. Maybe when we get into design review, we can discuss that further. I think I had similar thoughts, yeah.
But it sounds like you're open to maybe a slight revision depending on.
of course.
Side in terms of that.
Even at the stair area, I can probably come back a foot or two,
Yeah.
just to make it more interesting.
Yeah.
If that's,
I see.
If that helps, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay.
Okay, and with that, unless there are any other questions of the applicant, I will now turn it over to the public comment period.
Yes, we have 2 speaker cards. The first speaker is Yanni Overton, and the second speaker is Michelle Modena. So please feel free to approach the podium, and we will start the timer.
So I'm Yoni, and I live on the north side at 1127 Evelyn.
Oh, okay.
And my concerns are just practical at this point. I was very pleased to see the correction of the property line. My only 2 concerns are, on one of the drawings that showed the fence between our 2 properties, it says replace the existing fence, and there definitely is one that separates the 2 backyards and comes a bit forward into the front yard. But the way it's drawn, the fence, it looks like there's an existing fence all the way to the street, and there isn't. This part here, there isn't this fence. Now, I'm happy to have that be a fence. My only concerns are expense. I can't see myself objecting too much in terms of the various styles, as long as it's a reasonable style. But my only concern would be expense, because that would be a new portion of fence. And it did also say on the mailer that anything not discussed in this meeting might not be available for later discussion. So I just wanted to bring up that that actually is a small error on the drawing. And then the other major concern I think the whole neighborhood has is about the asbestos abatement, which I did bring up the last time. And it's been 5.5 months, and I don't know at which point that testing occurs to find out if there is asbestos, but I wonder if that was done, or how will the neighborhood know whether there is asbestos. I know that they pointed out last time that there are state regulations requiring very careful dismantling and debris handling and so forth, so that was reassuring to hear. But I just wonder how we find out what the results of that testing was, and if we can get some reassurance that that full measure for abatement will take place. And that's pretty much my primary concerns.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name's Michelle Modena. I live across the street at 1130 Evelyn, so I look at the house, and I've looked at it for almost 10 years.
You wrote the letter.
I did, and I was
Great.
going to say, I'm the
Very
person who
nice,
wrote
yeah.
the letter.
Nice
And
comments, nice comments. Well
thank
done.
you. And we did that after listening to the commission's hearing last time, taking notes and trying to really think about what you said. So I'm kind of following up on some of the comments that you made last time. The first concern is, has to do with the changes that the commission clearly asked at its last hearing for a design that met the recommended modern design elements in the guidelines that you put out. I can't tell from the drawings, what I should say is you talked about materials and the materials that were going to be used. An example is the railing. You said you wanted it it was originally a round railing, and you were concerned that the type of material could cheapen the design, and that's why you referred the owner and the architect to your guidelines. I can't tell from the proposed drawings whether the materials have changed or not, and I only saw the staff's findings tonight. I didn't have access to them, so I apologize for not being able to comment on that. But I would hope that the commission keeps to what it said last time in terms of making sure that the actual materials used on this project are up to the standards that you would expect according to your guidelines. The more important point, though, has to do with the north-facing wall. I look at that wall out my front door, and as you note from the plans, from the first plan to the proposed plan, they've taken out 2 windows, they've taken out the chimney, and it's now a vast expanse that's flat. At the last meeting, you talked about the setback. Tonight, it seems the rationale for getting rid of the setback is that it just decreases the square foot. However, when you look at the neighborhood, there is no house in our neighborhood with a second story that has no windows. I understand the next door neighbor's privacy concerns, and I think that could probably be addressed with clear story windows or privacy windows. But the fact that it is a flat expanse of nothingness is exactly, it's out of character for our neighborhood. We like the designs in the front. We did notice that there was a kind of a porch over, or a roof over the stairs, and that's gone now. So the front of the proposed house is completely flat. We'd like there to be a little bit more thoughtfulness with a modern design. We like good modern design. This is not as thoughtful as it should be. And I have only 26 seconds left, but I wanted to say that we want this property to be improved. We've longed for it to be improved, but bad design will hurt the neighborhood. And we think that with the property values of Albany right now, that a little bit more thought into good modern design will definitely be rewarded if it's eventually sold. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Okay, are there any other comments or anybody in the public who'd like to address the commission on this topic? Okay. Seeing no one, I will close the public comment period and bring it back to the commission for a full discussion. Is there a commissioner who would like to start the discussion?
I'll start.
Where to start?
Yeah, well, I just don't, I can't understand, there's a lot of things that haven't been coordinated. And especially, it's true, very, very true in the landscape drawing, when you see things like the agave is placed right where the steps are coming out. In fact, the steps aren't off the rear deck, are not reflected in the landscape plan. You're planting right where the steps are. So there's lots of little coordination issues that that show that there hasn't been much thought on looking at the architecture, how it relates to the landscape. The landscape, as pointed out, I don't understand a lot of what's, when it's explained, I can understand, but that's not really what we're doing here. Looking at a document that's recording what's going to be built. So we need to see it in plan. We just can't go on a described vision. So and being that the FAR is at maximum, I think we do want a landscape plan, and this one I don't think is really thought through far enough to accept. As far as the building goes, same issues apply. I think there's been some attempt at it, but we still have these 42-inch steel railings, which looks really industrial. I don't know why we need those. I think if you looked at railings around the community, you won't find anybody with 42 inches on their porch. It's very rare. Now, on the second floor, okay, maybe you have fall height there, but you don't really have that on your front porch. Actually, in that one, you might. And also, for instance, the proposed east elevation, which is up right here, you don't even have the elevation shown. So there's lots of, the railing shown. So there's lots of coordination issues like that, which are making the drawings contradictory and confusing.
Well, I'll follow that up. I appreciate the applicant's efforts to respond to the commission's comments, and I personally am not opposed to modern design. And so the fact that you've gone that way with a sort of contemporary design is fine with me. But similar to Commissioner Kent's comments, I have some kind of just basic concerns in terms of getting the documents that are going to be the record of this accurate. And one example for me is the second story of the proposed east elevation. Right now it has this French doors with 2 side lights, which I think looks great. But when you look at that in plan, the plan shows it basically only extending to the width of about this line. So the elevation basically is showing this group of windows and doors to be wider than it actually is in plan, because there's a wall for the second bedroom that lands right here. So things like that I would like to have vetted out and revised so that they accurately reflect, because either the layout of the second floor is going to have to change, or you're going to have a window from that patio into the bedroom, into that second bedroom. Whichever it is, I don't have a preference, but I just want it to be resolved before we move forward with that. And then similarly, I think as Commissioner Kent said, although it's shown on the site plan, things like the front planter, it should be really reflected, I think, in the proposed floor plans to help us get a sense of the scale and the actual location of the planters. And so then another question I have is just in terms architecturally, is that you're allowing 14 inches from the clear second-story ceiling height to the top of the roof. And with the roof being slightly sloped, I question that 14 inches is accurate, and that basically I think the building's going to end up being taller. You're going to probably have like 12-inch joists, and then your 5/8 inch ceiling board, the roof build up, a little bit of a parapet.
Rick, will you show with your pointer where your concern is?
So basically, they're showing basically like a ceiling height right here of 8 feet, which puts it right there, and then you have the top of the roof being 14 inches right above.
Yeah, okay.
And I think this is going to end up being taller.
It might be tight then, huh? Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the fact that the roof is sloped. I think it's going to be more durable than a flat roof for sure, and better drainage, so that's.
And you're within the building height requirements, so I mean, you can easily just
Go up
this parapet
go up
up
a little
so
bit,
it covers that up.
Right.
You still have the aesthetics of a modern sort of flat roof, but you can have your sloped roof behind for drainage and whatnot. But I just think that should be kind of accurately reflected in this, and I could be wrong too. And then my other comment would be, I think as some of the public had expressed and Commissioner Kennett expressed, I think just a little bit more clarification in terms of the details. I appreciate that you called out a metal railing, but I think we're looking for more specifics in terms of, is it going to be an 1.5 inch round metal hollow tube, or is it going to be square hollow tubes for the posts with metal cables run through, or is it going to have a cedar sort of cap to the railing to mix up the materiality? Things like that, I think, need to be clarified in the drawings. Yes, and please come up and comment if you like.
I think what would be more helpful, instead of like giving it like an open forum as far as like what type of railing, do you guys have a specification? Because it sounds like the owner's willing to do whatever you guys recommend. And by doing this, like guessing, okay, I'll do this, I'll do this, I'll do that, I think we're gonna probably continue this meeting until like another year. And, there's holding costs every month for the gentleman here. So I think if you really have a specific recommendation, just call it out. Because there's really no right or wrong. He's just doing what you guys recommend. So if you guys prefer a square type of rail, 1 inch by 1 inch with a wood cap, that's totally fine. Just call it out. Because I feel like going back and forth with this meeting, it's like a guessing game. And he's totally open to what you guys want. At the end of the day, he wants to satisfy the residents and the commissioner. So it'd be super helpful if you guys just call it out.
Yeah, okay.
You know what I mean? Like, just, because he just wants to build a home and move in. And with this going back and forth, he's like clueless, And that's why, like, if you guys can just give a specific detail, then they'll know what to do.
I hear your concerns, and we will try to work with you. And I appreciate that comment. Thank you for clarifying that. Sometimes it's just, I think as one commissioner said previously, we don't want to design the building for you. That's not our job necessarily. That's your designer or architect's job. And so we can give you some more specific comments, hopefully to help you move this forward. But in terms of it, we don't necessarily want to just have you build what we want. We want you to build what you want while still trying to like maintain some design standards, if you will. So to that effect, I would say for my preference, and again, I can't guarantee that all the commissioners would agree with this, but my preference would be that you have maybe like a 1.5 or 2 inch square metal posts. You would have a cedar, probably 1.5 inch thick cedar cap for the railing. And then in terms of the rails in between, I'll leave that up to you to determine. There are various things you can do, metal cable wires, you can have wood, planks, but we just really want to make sure that the design is thought through and not just sort of stuck on there.
Can I comment here? This is pushing the FAR as far as possible. If your designer feels overwhelmed, maybe you should bring another professional on that can help him iron it out. I think obviously Mr. Wong knows how to build very well, and you know how to construct, but maybe the aesthetics part is not your forte. If you could bring somebody on the team that could help you with the aesthetics, that's all we're asking, because we can't design it by committee up here. It's just going to be a disaster. So you need somebody that you can just help you work all those little issues out. And I know it's a pain, but it's a new building. We want, like I said before, we want you to build it, even though it doesn't seem like that. We're really for you, but we want this to be, in the long run, something that's an addition to the community, and you love it, and everybody visits, looks at it, that it's beautiful. The engineering is a whole other part of it that your engineer can probably handle very well, but the aesthetic part, I think you need another professional on.
And I agree, and I think in terms of more detail, I'm just looking for something in the drawings that actually solidifies what it's going to be. Like a section through the railing so I can see the actual diameter of it. Things like that, rather than just, 6 horizontal lines that have a little note that say metal railing. So I need something more definitive. Excuse me. And then to address, I think, some of the public's comments in terms of like the facade being flat, I do appreciate that you've pushed back the upper floor so you have a little bit of a recess and a little bit of diversity in terms of geometry and the planting bed at the front. I think that's good. I would also suggest that you add in fire-rated windows at the stairwell on the north. I believe that's the north elevation.
Yep.
To, at the very least, to help make that elevation a little more dynamic, and consider possibly adding 1 or 2 more windows into the bedroom that are fire-rated on that second floor. north wall. And then just I'll generally say for myself, I am okay with approving extending the non-conforming wall, given that it is such a tight lot and it's hard to provide parking and get a usable amount of square footage. But that being said, you are pushing for the maximum allowable square footage that's buildable. So because of that, we expect exceptional design in terms of the project. And then the last thing I'd add too, maybe for that cantilever at the front, I would consider putting in some brackets, maybe at the two sides here, to kind of support the cantilever and add a little bit of architectural aesthetic to it. And I think those would be kind of the gist of my comments for the project. And also, to get your point, ma'am, my other concern was just that the plans don't coincide with the elevations. If you could scroll up to the proposed plans. And so here we have, you can see, this wall comes basically right in the middle of the building. And so on the elevation, you're showing this extending all the way over to about 2/3 of the front elevation. So there's actually a wall right here. So things like that, that's nothing aesthetically, that's just something that needs to be vetted out and should be made sure it's correct before it's presented to us.
On the plus side, I think the interior plan is quite nice.
So I'll just add, I generally agree with the comments that we heard from Commissioner Geeson Fields. I also totally appreciate that, it can be frustrating if you feel like you're just trying to guess at what will get approved. As a brief aside, I'm working on a big project right now where it got to a city council somewhere in the Bay Area, and the feedback was literally, we don't like the way it looks. And I don't know what you're supposed to do with that. So I hope we are giving you more direction than that. But from my perspective, I think, I don't think this needs to take another year. Certainly, hopefully we can, make some small tweaks, come back one more time and get this thing approved. I think, for me to support this project, I would want to see, some of the fixes made in terms of the plans and the elevations, and calling things out, as my fellow commissioners have mentioned. Work with staff to find a way to get the floor area ratio within the limits that the city sets. And I do share the concerns about the sort of vast blank expanse on the upper level of the north wall. So I think, I don't have a particular proposal about how to break that up. I think you've heard a couple other ideas about that. But really just anything that will get some light in there and or just break up that expansive wall.
Any other?
Okay, let's see where to start. Okay, first of all, I appreciate your taking on this project. You're looking at one of the, poorer pieces of our housing stock in Albany, and you're going to renovate it and make it into a new home, and I applaud you for doing that, and I think that it's going to be an improvement over what's there for sure. Because you are going to go up so close to the limit of our FAR, I don't have much sympathy for your desire for us to, rush this decision forward and get a decision made tonight. When you go to that level of floor area ratio, we demand quality design, and I think we have a right to make you come back a couple of times till we're satisfied with that level of design, until our comments are satisfied. I have no problem extending the north wall. I think it's the right thing to do on this narrow lot, and particularly considering that the next door neighbor's home on the north side is well set back from their southern property line. It works, and I think it's fine to extend that north wall up. Let's see, looking at the plans. First of all, scroll down a little bit, if you will. I think that east elevation is actually west elevation. I had trouble with that when I got out in the field. So you need to change the labels around, which is east and which is west. I think that you have a mistake there. The front should be the west. I do want to see, I still want to see some new windows, some windows on the north side. We can do that. We have approved that. I like the idea. I like the idea of a long window over the staircase. Potentially, it could be glass bricks, and I saw some glass bricks across the street on a house. Glass blocks which are translucent. Or probably for your own light and air, you might be better off just having a window in there, a long vertical window that would be non-opening and meet the fire safety code there. I would like to see at least a light, a fixed window light on the north side wall, a north side on the front bedroom. I think that front bedroom could use the extra window, and I think it can work there. And Eric talked about one or two. As far as I'm concerned, the north elevation would be more balanced if you had a window on the front elevation, a window in the center over the staircase, and a window a window on the front bedroom on the north side, a window over the staircase, and a window on the back bedroom. But I wouldn't require that. At least two, though, up there, should be up there on the north side. And I think that we know, the staff can help you, and we know how to deal with the fire safety concerns for the windows that are on the property line there, so close to the property line. On the south elevation, let me take a look at that. I want to make the same comment that I made on a project earlier tonight. Let's see, that's proposed. Am I looking at that right? The two back windows are in a bedroom. That's at the rear. And it's possible that someone will want to put a bed along that wall. And therefore, I would make a long horizontal window, one window, and get rid of the two standard size windows and have a high window so that you could have room in that bedroom to locate the bed underneath that window in the back, the window there on the side. So, and I had a question. I think, do I understand my own notes here? You have a large bedroom in the bathroom there. Maybe that could be smaller. That's on the south elevation, that first bedroom from the front. You might want to have a smaller a smaller window in that bathroom. And then I was looking at the possibility of a bedroom at the front bedroom, of a window in the front bedroom on the south side. I'd leave that to your discretion, but if I see if I've done that right. Yeah, that front bedroom has one window facing the west, and that's it. And it's possible that you might want to have more light and air in that bedroom, in that front bedroom, and you could put a window on the south side there. It's a possibility. And then I had similar concerns with Eric over the front elevation there with the railing, and it didn't look like the layout, the interior layout quite jibed with the layout of your front elevation, and that needs to be fixed up, I think, before we can approve it. Let's see, what else? I think we'd earlier asked about having a real quality, a good door. You need to have the door for this home as a contemporary design needs to make a statement. And I think we'd said that earlier. And your plans don't really show, exactly what we're thinking of. I like the idea of the nice contemporary street, house numbers down there, and maybe the door is good, but it'd be nice if, you could show us a cut sheet or give us some idea of what you're thinking of for the door. I think it's going to be an important element of the house. And color, it could, we don't know what color you're going to be painting the house, but a dramatic standout door color would be good there. My last question is kind of one for you, and also I want to ask Eric about this because he is the architect on the commission here. The quality of the windows. It looks like you're talking about dual pane aluminum windows. Do those meet our, sort of meet our quality standards, or can they meet our quality standards for, exceptional design? Or should we be looking at, or are these relatively affordable windows, and you're looking at the budget here, or can these be really good quality windows?
I mean, well, I will say in response, as an example, typically in the city and county of San Francisco, when you're doing a new project or a restoration and you're replacing a window, they prefer for the windows to be either wood or metal frame windows. And they highly discourage you from using aluminum. They very much prefer wood, metal frames, or wood-clad window. So, I mean, I think in terms of your comment, it depends on the manufacturer. You can find some companies that make good aluminum frame windows. I would think that you could possibly find for a comparable price point, a wood frame window for the project. I don't know that for a fact, but something to maybe look into. Yes, please. Mm-hmm.
I think that's probably the most cost-effective because it's big wood that's totally written out of the budget.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's definitely a viable alternative to the aluminum frame.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're looking for something that has a little bit more of that aesthetic and materiality feel to it rather than the aluminum.
Would it be more helpful, aside from the photos, maybe bringing pictures of like the finishes? Because some of the finishes you can't generate in a computer system, like if it helps, maybe perhaps bring you a booklet of the type of windows they're going to select.
Yes, that'd be very helpful to do that. And if you were in Berkeley, you'd be required to bring in your sample sheets and paint chip lists and all of that. We don't require that, but in other cities they do. And in this case, that would be helpful.
Yeah, no, I think I'm gonna guess here. I'm not gonna assume anything, but I'm guessing that this might be continued to another date for another review, and so I think that would be helpful to bring in either material samples or photos, and even if you want to bring in like a color board of proposed sort of paint colors, but that's not necessary. But things like that would help us to better understand exactly what you're proposing.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I would recommend that if this is to go forward.
I'll say this, one thing. I know that you're looking really closely at your budget, and I appreciate that. Building these days is really expensive, but we need to look at building quality when you're going up near the maximum FAR. And so we're going to want you to make some trade-offs, and we're going to want some more expensive materials probably than what you would come up with if you were just trying to keep the cost as low as possible. Mm-hmm.
If you come up to...
Yeah.
So in regards to the windows, I think probably because you haven't seen the finishes, you might be a little bit discouraged because you think that aluminum fiberglass is very cheap. But it actually looks really nice. So maybe we can continue this conversation later when you actually see the materials.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And then have it stain a certain color where it can achieve that wood or even like the modern look.
Yeah.
Without having to have you guys think that we're sacrificing, the the quality, because the quality, I mean, the windows, they actually have a 20-year warranty.
Right,
You know what I mean? So the quality is there. I think you probably just have to see it first.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that would definitely
Well, I'm
help
sure
us.
that there are good aluminum windows and not so good aluminum windows, and I'm sure that there are, and fiberglass windows, we've seen them, other projects proposed, and we've approved them before, and to my knowledge, they've been fine, so, that can work out. But that to me was a red flag. When I saw that, I said, well, the aluminum windows, they can look pretty inexpensive. They can look cheap. And that, for a project that has this FAR, I expect better. Yeah.
And so I know we've given you a lot of suggestions, recommendations. To help move this forward, I'm going to, oh, I'm sorry.
I don't have any other comments.
No, okay, I'm sorry about that. I would recommend that we continue this to a date uncertain. But I think there is sort of a laundry list of things to address. And I not to be disparaging to Mr. Wong, but I feel like we've had this issue with coordination of the elevation and plans the last time it was presented. And so, and just in terms of interpreting our comments. So I just be very sort of heightened when you're dealing with that. And I wouldn't hesitate to suggest that you maybe get another sort of designer like yourself to help you with the aesthetic aspects of it, just to help put it over the top. But my recommendation would be that the project is continued either to a date uncertain or to a date certain, to allow you to address some of these comments. And if need be, I don't want to prolong this, but we also do study sessions where we don't make a formal finding, but you can present the project and then we can give you our comments. And then you can take those to then incorporate towards an actual final presentation for design review. So that might be something that might help going forward if you feel like you're hitting a wall in terms of trying to finalize the design. So that would be my recommendation for the project. I don't know if there's any other comments or motion or.
I'd just like to expand upon something you mentioned. The laundry list, I'm afraid that this might come back as a laundry. Okay, we did this, that's what you said, that's what you said. And it just looks like a committee design thing. We don't want that. If it comes back again like that, then I won't hesitate to push back on it again. I really think someone needs to sit down who's done this sort of thing before and coordinate all the elements. The images would be great, but just images saying, I'm going to do this, but not pointing to the plan and no detail that shows it isn't enough. So the images do help a lot, but they're not going to solve the problem. We still need, the whole thing has to look together as a whole.
Feel free to use staff as an interface here. Feel free, be sure to contact them, and they're here. They've heard what we've said tonight. They've worked with us on many other projects, and they can really help you move it forward, I think, if you talk with them, if you have confusion about what we're really trying to say, which is, we'll understand, could be the case, but staff will help interpret that, I think. That's good.
Yeah. And also to be clear, the comments that each of us individually make are based on our own personal preference, but ultimately you have to get the majority of us to agree upon it. So I may have suggested something that, some of the other commissioners might not agree with, and that's why I personally don't want to just tell you what to do, and that's why we want you to kind of design it and present to us.
Could I make one other comment then? Going back to one of the speakers we had, you asked, maybe I'm stepping outside of my own area of expertise here, I don't know, but I want to mention the asbestos, the question you raised about the asbestos removal. I'm not an asbestos contractor, but there has been so much asbestos removed as a matter of routine from so many old buildings in California and in the Bay Area now that it's a pretty standard protocols that contractors follow to do that. And I wouldn't worry about it myself. I've had asbestos removed from my own home. And it is something that people were very alarmed about in some years ago with all the lawsuits over everything. But the protocols are down now, and it's not even particularly expensive, and it's the kind of thing that that approved contractors do on a daily basis. I'm sure there is some asbestos in this old building. It's very likely. When a licensed contractor comes in to do the work, they'll know what to do, and they'll be required to take care of it by the city's building inspector. I don't think it's not something I would be terribly worried about, and I appreciate your raising the question and your potential anxiety about it, but we have a lot of experience in dealing with that in the past 20 years, now 15 years, and a lot of it goes back to the mines where it came from now. That's the cheapest way to get rid of it. I think I just want to end that there.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
It's up to the chair.
I think we'll leave it at that because it's not really part of our design review. It's something that will be handled by the building permitting phase of the project after it passes through planning and zoning. And that will be a responsibility of the building inspector to verify.
Yeah.
So with that, unless there are any other comments, I'm open to a motion. I don't know if we
I'll move to continue planning application 16094 at 1131 Evelyn to a date uncertain, I think.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, there's been a motion and it's been seconded, and we will leave it up to you to work with staff to come up with the earliest date possible to bring this back. I hope and I feel strongly that it won't be a year from now. It'll be sooner than that. But we'll leave it to staff and you to figure out the exact date. Okay, there's been a motion and it's been seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, this project has been continued to a date uncertain. Hopefully we'll see you soon in the next year. And please, I would, suggest getting a third party to help you bring this all together and hit the nail on the head. So I wish you the best of luck. All right, thank you. All right, with that, we have new business. The establishment of affordable housing nexus fee on new development.
Yeah. Jeff Bond, hello. I haven't seen you for a long time.
Good evening, Commissioners. It's nice to be here.
Stop lying.
Are you sure?
I missed design review. I really do. Ann was on vacation. I got my scales out. It was great. This evening, I'd like to get the Commission's preliminary feedback on the next phase of our analysis and potential implementation of an affordable housing nexus fee. To give you a little bit of a refresher, this is something that first came up in our housing element that was approved in 2015. There was a series of policies and programs that we were to implement over the next 8 years. We're now a couple years into that, and among those was to conduct a nexus study and although it didn't commit the city to implementing this fee, it does require the city to go through the process of considering the implementation of an affordable housing fee. We had and by the way, the impetus for this particular program did come from the State Housing Community Development Department in their review. They among other things, they noted this as something that they would like to see in our housing element. We had the good fortune to be able to work with a collaboration of various Santa Clara County and Alameda County cities in a joint effort to prepare an affordable housing nexus fee study. Silicon Valley Community Foundation funded a substantial amount of it. We paid, I'm not remembering the dollar amount, $32,000, which is maybe 20% of the normal cost for doing something like this.
Yeah, right.
And because we were doing it in partnership with other cities. The consultant who actually prepared the study, Kaiser Marston Associates, was able to do it much more efficiently. The project management and some of the financial support was from this community foundation. So that was great. That report, the commission reviewed in 2016. The city council this spring accepted the report and directed that we continue to the next phase, which is to discuss and present ultimately to the city council a recommendation about what a fee level should be. The big picture, what we're trying to do, the reason we're doing this is what we want to create, what we don't really have today in Albany, which is a locally controlled funding source to help facilitate the development of affordable housing. Larger cities have had redevelopment agencies and had resources to do bigger projects. Some cities have housing authorities. Albany, given its size and given that its redevelopment area, when we had it, was very small, we've just never had that financial capacity to create the affordable housing that we're anxious to be able to do. So this is just part of the solution if we were to implement it. The cost of subsidizing housing to make it affordable to people is dramatic, in the order of magnitude of a couple $100,000 per unit. So this isn't a complete solution, but it's a part of it. And the fact that it's locally controlled is good, and that we have the most flexibility in how we want to apply it. So kind of cutting to the bottom line for this evening is what we're looking for from you is some preliminary reaction and direction about where do you want this to land. The Nexus study found that there is technical support for dramatically high fees.
Right.
And fees that you would never, in no community has gotten close to implementing at the maximum level.
Yeah.
So you have a lot.
What do you mean by technical? You said that
Technical support.
you had technical support dictating that. You just mean like technically the findings dictate that?
The math, in a sense,
Okay.
that if we wanted, and using this slide as an example, we could legally, we have the mathematical analysis to support us.
The rationale or the good reason,
Right.
a defensible, legally defensible reason to charge.
The law says that we're
Bucks.
supposed to be reasonable and that there be a relationship between the fee that we're charging and the problem we're trying to solve. In this case, theoretically, we could charge a $76,000 fee on a single-family home. Cities just don't do that, but we could. So you have a lot of discretion.
Okay.
And it really is going to come down to, I think, a judgment call about, from the commission making the recommendation, the council ultimately deciding, where do you want us to fall? And to kind of give you a little bit of a sense about this, I think most of the time when we look at the fees that we charge for permits, we're on the lower end of other cities. When we look at our neighboring cities, we're usually on the lower end because we're a smaller operation and we have less overhead. It's just the way it is. It's not that we're not making judgment about it. That's just the way it works out. And we generally like being there. We don't like to hear just in our day-to-day work of people complaining about fees. We like to be able to say, well, we're probably a lot lower than Berkeley. We're probably a lot lower than Oakland. And that makes our lives a little bit easier. But sometimes there are exceptions to that. And one example of an exception is we have a very high public art fee. And that was a public art fee.
Right.
And that was a policy decision that the council made a number of years ago, that they really wanted to be on the leading edge of this, and they were willing to make that decision. If there's pushback from people who are paying it, they were okay with that. So we could, if you wanted, say we want to be on the lower end. We could say, no, we want to be out there on the leading edge. We really want to set the example. Or you could pick something in between. It's really, I'm sorry to kind of dump it on you without a lot of guidance, but that's kind of where we're at. And I think actually when the commission last talked about this, you sort of wanted to be able to kick it up around yourselves without a specific recommendation from us. So we don't have a recommendation for you. Just kind kind of some points of reference for you. This is a slide of the first part. There's two things going on this slide on the screen. The first two rows are out of the Nexus study, which is the maximum level, and the bottom three are the closest neighboring cities that have a similar program. I will say that the city of El Cerrito recently completed an affordable housing strategy, and one of the proposals or recommendations in that study is that they do a fee program like this. So we're a little bit ahead of them, but not far. That's why they're not here.
City of Oakland?
No, El Cerrito.
El Cerrito, okay.
So usually when we look at these things, how do we compare with the surrounding communities? We look at El Cerrito, Berkeley, Oakland, Emeryville, if it's applicable. So that just kind of gives you an idea of the ranges where different cities are landing. And this is a fee on a new residential development. So if somebody came in and said, I'm going to build a brand new house in Oakland, and Zone 1 is I think they had 3 zones in Oakland. The Zone 1 is my sense of what the closest to the Albany market, so kind of the Rock Ridge, Temescal, Montclair areas of Oakland. So in Oakland, you pay $23,000. On top of everything else, you pay $23,000. The city of Oakland puts that in a special fund that they use to build affordable housing. Berkeley's a little more, $34,000, as you can see. Emeryville's got a fee, but it's focused only on apartments. I'm not sure I know the rationale for that, but we could find that out if you're interested in it.
And sorry, Jeff, what did you say the status of El Cerrito's fee program is? Have they recommended a particular fee level?
No.
They're still figuring that out?
They did an affordable housing strategy document, kind of like a supplement maybe to a housing element. And one of the policy recommendations is that they should do this.
They should, okay.
But they haven't.
Okay.
To our knowledge, we haven't seen anything. This next screen, the same format, the top row is what the maximum that the Nexus fee study would the math in the Nexus fee study, and these numbers are even more ridiculous in terms of what you might charge someone. I can't imagine saying to someone, you have to pay us $144 a square foot for your new office building or your new restaurant. Or restaurant would be $250.
What is the max? I mean, where do they get the max from? Why would the max be 500?
They calculated it. I mean, they've worked through the math in the report.
Why wouldn't it be?
And it has to do with how many jobs are created, and how many jobs create housing, and how that tapers down into the demand for new houses.
So if you go above the max,
What?
if you go above the max, no one would ever build anything? I mean,
If you go above the max, it'd be more difficult for the city to legally defend
it, yeah.
the level that someone could challenge and say there's not a reasonable relationship between your fee and.
You can't have arbitrary fees. You have to have fees that have a rationale behind them, and so we can go up to 144.
It's not really looking at what pencils out with this additional fee, what can the property carry? It's on the other side, which is what can we legally defend? And then you would scale down from there.
It has nothing to do with what the property can carry. And in fact, there's a reasonable argument that people will make that, using going back to the residential for a second, you're adding $23,000 cost to the cost of a market rate unit.
You are.
Which the buyer or the renter is going to carry in one form or another sooner or later.
Yeah.
And that's a policy trade-off. Again, the council can decide whether or you can make a recommendation to them whether that's warranted. So back to the commercial fees for a second. These are, again, everybody's a little bit all over the map on this, but basically, as you can see, as an example, in Oakland, if you build a new office building in Oakland, you're paying a little over $5 a foot that goes in the fund. Nothing in Berkeley. Emeryville, it's $4.27.
Why does Berkeley have nothing? Do Do you know the rationale? I mean,
I haven't, and one of the things that we'd love to get from you this evening is some direction on what you'd like to learn more about. And if you want us to interview some of these other cities, we'd be happy to do that.
I think Berkeley has a different rate if you're over 5 stories. It goes up significantly.
if you do what?
Over 5 stories, the units carry a lot more, 100,000.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember that.
And I believe Oakland just introduced their fees. I think they made the decision last year, and they start to taper in this year, so it's new for them.
That's right. And
Right, and, oh, sorry, the fees for Oakland, because I think there's like a phase-in, right? Like there are different levels at different times. Is this like the max or the initial fees?
This was what would be effective July 2018. And
Coming up, they've just approved it, and it's going to
Short
be,
phase-in window, if I remember.
it's going to take effect, yeah.
it was one of the, is
But
part of the
it's like
attachments.
the ultimate fees, not the initial,
I was thinking what would be, if you were to proceed the next few
Something
months
right
with
now.
this, probably in the middle of summer sometime, you might have a program in place. What would be comparable at that point in time?
Okay.
As far as we know. And I did attach to your staff report there, I've tried to pull the fee schedules actually from these other cities. So they're a little confusing sometimes, but some of those details are in there if you're interested. And again, we can spend more time with those cities in particular if you want.
So what we're dealing with here then is a policy decision, policy guidance to the council, which is totally different from design review and work we're used to. I'm thinking back to how we've kind of worked on this before, going back to when I was in the zoning commission and on the zoning code revision, and then thinking back to the general plan. Probably what I would think we would want from staff is some guidance for like what are the decision points we make, or a decision agenda, the key points. Do we want a fee on residential at all? Do we want a fee on commercial at all? If we want a fee on residential, what type of residential will be the next step that would apply? And then after that, what needs to go into deciding how high that fee should be set, and other things that come on. So I think that would be, kind of like the general plan process. So it might be, let's have a few meetings with 1 or 2 questions, policy questions in front of us at every meeting, and try to work through it that way. So I did read the report. I'm wondering if I read it before. Did we get this a year ago? I wonder if I missed that meeting or something.
There was
like
a
unfamiliar
preliminary
to
draft.
me. I hate to admit it. I said, this is great. This is new stuff, though.
It's kind of boring reading, so maybe it
It
just.
is. It's tedious. It's hard. Yeah.
a lot of numbers.
But yeah, you saw it twice, actually. I'm sorry to say.
Twice we saw it. And I don't
Stick in
remember.
there, I guess.
Isn't that something? So this is going to be not easy. It's going to be a little bit tricky then. But it's real important. So I don't know. I mean, I think the commission should go through a whole decision-making process. But as I was reading it anyway today, I don't want to leapfrog too far ahead, I guess, but just some initial reactions on my part anyways. I was reading it today. I was thinking, well, how is this going to apply to Albany, or is this just sort of an academic exercise for Albany? We haven't seen any multifamily development to speak of in the last few years. No new projects are coming in, but I'm wondering why that is. We have our new housing element approved. We have a growing economy. We have lots of development in Berkeley. We have lots of development coming in El Cerrito, north and south of us, and we're not seeing much here. So the first question is, well, what's wrong with Albany, and why should we be adding any fees on to make it harder? And then they talk about how the whole rationale I liked in the report was that a developer's going to look at your fee right up front. He'll know what your fee is up front. And the developer's going to go through a whole bunch of calculations, and he's going to go back to the people he buys the land from, and he's going to say, no, your land isn't worth what you want it to, because it's only worth, it has reduced value because of Albany's fees, and we'll buy it for the reduced value. And so I thought, well, that's an interesting way to look at it, and that's the way economists must look at it, and that's the way Kaiser Marston looked at it here. Well, this all comes back to affecting the land value. But Albany has really valuable land, and I, for the life of me, don't understand why we haven't seen more development proposals coming down the pike. That being said, maybe we ought to get fees in place right away, so that if we do have some development come forward, we can at least get something to put in an affordable housing fund.
So I would offer that, I think that this discussion, and there's obviously a lot to talk about here, but I think it all needs to be grounded in what are the city's goals with respect to creation of affordable housing. Like, that needs to be the starting point. Like, if we're thinking about how much money should we charge developers for affordable housing as the starting point, like, and I'm a latecomer to these conversations. I know there have been others, so
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting that hasn't gone on, but it seems to me like this conversation is kind of looking at just a piece of it, but we really need to be talking about, like, what are we trying to do? Are we trying to create enough standalone funds to build some housing development project that will be, purely below market rate? Or are we talking about setting up funds to create, to subsidize inclusion of units within other development projects? What are the sites that are potentially being identified? And so, like, I think I need to understand that piece of it before being able to really have a meaningful conversation about what the fees should look like.
And we need, that's a good point. We need to review, our housing element, and that's where we start.
Sure, and again, I know that this that there has been analysis about all of this, but in terms of the fees, I mean, I think I have a few questions and just some initial thoughts. But again, if our goal is to actually create units in Albany, they're going to be affordable to families at a variety of income levels. I think we need to make sure that whatever kind of fee we're developing actually advances those goals and doesn't have unintended consequences on, market rate housing costs, because I think it is pretty well established that although, that there are good reasons to impose inclusionary housing fees, but they do get passed on, and they end up often driving up costs for people who are maybe like just above the cutoff of where they might be able to qualify for affordable housing. And so that kind of concern about squeezing people in the middle, I think is something that we need to look at very closely, and generally for me would be an argument in favor of not trying to assess the maximum we possibly could, but really, trying to make sure we're fine-tuning it. I did want to just ask a couple of quick questions. So one is whether any of the new legislation that the state passed in this, package of housing bills changes any of the analysis that's going on. I haven't looked as closely at the bills about affordable housing. If I could just finish. I haven't looked as closely at the bills about affordable housing per se, but I think there were a few of those. So that's one question, and does that kind of suggest there may need to be additional analysis on the nexus study, or sorry, I lost my train of thought on that. But the other question I had was just trying to better understand kind of the comps. So obviously, it's good to be looking at Berkeley and similar neighborhoods of Oakland, Emeryville. I'm just wondering if there are other cities throughout the Bay Area that you would typically use as kind of comps for Albany. I know we are a unique community in a lot of ways, but what are the other towns that we might look at just to get a broader
Yeah.
set of comparisons?
There's, it kind of depends. So while there are a lot of cities on the San Mateo County, kind of on the peninsula, that are similar in scale to Albany, the economics there are so much different with, I'm thinking of Belmont or San Carlos or something like that. So they're in a very different place in terms of their housing market, so that might not be a great example. Going up the Interstate 80 corridor up into Contra Costa County, there might be some cities that would be comparable. You know, I don't know that we're, again, kind of focusing on the housing market part of this. I'm not sure that I see as Lafayette or Orinda, Moraga kind of being.
Yeah, they seem very different to me. That's why I was truly like asking the question,
hard.
like,
There
are there
aren't a lot
any
of
other
cities like
comps
Albany.
that, yeah,
What I was struck by reading this was the huge variation between the 18 cities that Kaiser Marson did the comps on. And huge variation, and so clearly I said, wow, this is like, it's like almost arbitrary what no one is doing exactly what their neighbor is doing, and there's some cities that are doing similar things, but I mean, look at that right now. So, you know, Berkeley is doing nothing on commercial development, but the other cities are. I mean, Berkeley's doing nothing there, it says, and those kinds of discrepancies were amazing. So it's like, wow, this is a tough policy decision, and we have to kind of do it on our own. That's what I was left with when I looked at all those comps. They're hard to pick out any guidance from there, any idea what other people have. It's like we do have to invent the wheel ourselves this time. Yeah.
With respect to your comments about kind of get context of what we're thinking about for affordable housing, we are giving that a lot of thought, and be happy to share that with you.
that would be great.
And also, this was a very busy year for the state legislature. Still some kind of, I think, discussion in our profession about whether it really means anything or not. But there's certainly a high volume of legislation, and we can bring that to you as well. So that combination of things would probably be a really interesting discussion, irrespective of this, but might help support your discussion.
One thing I know they did, and that is you can now have inclusionary units and rentals.
That's an example. They passed a very simple piece of legislation that essentially says the intent of the legislature that there can be inclusionary housing on rental units. And so what's called the Palmer decision that stopped that about 7 or 8 years ago has been. Well, I think the legislature responded to the court ruling.
Yeah, I think the one I was tracking was 1505. Yeah. I kind of share some of what I've heard today is like the economic viability and why aren't we seeing some of the development? And then I mean, if the goal is to deliver affordable units, if 1505 kind of opens the door again for inclusionary, is that a better way to actually get units delivered? Actually, at this point, from 0, but assuming that number gets bigger in terms of units, is that a better way to deliver it as opposed to creating an impact fee and a set-aside by the city to wait for 6 or 8 different projects to get developed so we can actually aggregate enough money to actually get a project built? I mean, given that we really haven't seen anything at this scale in 5 years. I'm struggling with that as well.
I think that's a good.
Just one more observation in terms of development. It's surprising me just how, even on the residential side, I mean, 7 years into this economic boom, and still most of the development's been in the West Bay, both in terms of office and even housing. And when I look out my window in downtown Oakland, it really was only in the last 6 or 8 months, 9 months, where you've really seen stuff under construction now, this far into the cycle.
Yeah, wow.
So in that sense, it's not just Albany. It just seems like the construction costs are so darn high right now.
Yeah.
And then the rents don't cover it. And maybe they're covering it, starting to cover it now, but.
As I was walking over here tonight, and I was thinking, well, you know, I haven't seen any multifamily homes in P and Z the last couple of years, haven't seen much commercial development. This is kind of an academic exercise, but so I was thinking, what have we seen? And how could we do, is there any way we can work with this that would fit into the reality that I see as a planning commissioner right now? My thought was, totally off the wall maybe, but what if we had a fee on single-family additions that exceeded 0.45? And that money, maybe modest, but that money would then somehow go into subsidizing secondary residential units that would encourage more, granny units, more secondary residential units in Albany. We see quite a few of them. People seem willing to build them. But if we had a fee, and it got a modest fee, maybe it got $100,000 in it in a couple of years or something like that, then we would say, well, if you guarantee that you will rent your granny unit for a certain low income, whatever, we could make this policy decision on that, then the city will then help you, subsidize you in building that unit. You can apply to our affordable housing fund, and you can get some of your building costs subsidized, or other. That'd probably be the thing I do. I thought, well, now, I don't know if that's legal. We probably now have the Nexus study that would say we could do that, and I think in terms of going over we have so many people coming in, and they're building, $1 million plus homes, and they're building out to the max, and those are people who have money. They must, and I think that would be perfectly legitimate. It seems like there's a connection there to me. That those are people who could afford to pay an affordable housing fee to help in small ways solve the affordable housing problem. So, just a thought I had. I'm just trying to figure out how this might fit into the reality that I know in Albany.
And I guess, just to clarify for me then, the residential Nexus fee would only apply to like ground up new construction? So like we had that project in tonight, I would assume it would apply to that project since they're completely rebuilding a new building, or?
I think it would be at your discretion if you wanted to I'd have to go back and check and see how the other cities are handling it. I suspect most of them, because they have so much more new housing starts, they probably just apply it to the new housing starts. But I don't think the Nexus fee study was, strictly speaking, I don't think it would keep us from exploring a fee per square foot, as an example, on any type of residential.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I guess just another random thought I had was I was looking at, I'm not sure what it is. I guess it's the Kaiser Marsden Associates report. I'd be interested in, because I think we haven't had a lot of success with the whole rent review issue in the city. I'd be open to considering an impact fee for rental units, and maybe have, with certain exclusions for owner-occupied rental buildings, or an exclusion that makes it only apply to like 3 units or more, or something like that. But I'd be interested in looking into
For new construction.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, what is the impact that fee would be intended to?
And that, again, would be for affordable housing.
Oh, for affordable housing?
Yeah, so either for the impact fee to then allow us to build our own, or to put in towards, I think as Doug said, a kind of good idea would be to either use it as a sort of carrot to entice them to have either some form of exclusionary or, inclusionary or some sort of affordable rate rental unit within the building as an alternative.
Do you know what our expectations are for how many affordable units we should be putting in each year?
I forget.
I've got it here. I'm going to guess, I think our housing element numbers were something in the neighborhood of 360.
Yeah.
I want to say like 160 or 170 to be affordable at some scale.
Yeah.
During the whole,
in the
during the
next,
whole
5
RENA
years.
period?
Yeah, during the RENA
8 years.
Up to 2035 or something.
And do we have any applications in the pipeline to get us toward that, that new construction goal?
It's all nickel and diming and ADUs.
The one I would mention, and just in passing, because with respect to Brown Act, I don't want you to start talking about this particular project, but there is a city-owned parcel, corner of Cleveland and Washington. It's on the kind of the southern end of the New Pierce Street Park.
Yeah.
We're exploring what would be involved if that were to be developed as a resident. It's a city-owned parcel, so we can do what we want with it.
Yeah.
And one of the options would be to develop it for affordable housing. So we're looking into the feasibility of that.
Yeah.
And this would be, and you'll hear about that soon. We've got a consultant working on that, doing some background work for us.
And I just one question is, how many other sort of opportunity lots do we have in the city that the city either owns or that we could potentially, because I know it's really limited.
That's it for what we own that is,
Okay.
Yeah.
unless we
Yeah.
subdivide this building.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should have.
How does it work in other cities on a fee? Like, do they set aside the funds and then an affordable housing developer comes in and acquires a site or gets an option on a site and then they apply to the city? Is that how logistically?
Yes. Or the city might use the funds just to do some of the preliminary planning and entitlement work so that they're teeing up the property to make it easier for someone to develop.
But on a city-owned property or on a privately owned property?
Either way.
Really?
Particularly on a city-owned property, which is what we would,
Yeah.
I mean, with you on the
Cleveland.
example I was talking about, we wouldn't want to just say to a developer, affordable housing developer, you got to go do all the work. We want to do as much as we can up front so that it's more attractive to them and we get a better deal. And so some of that takes a little bit of money. And bigger cities have they have whole housing departments, and these funds go to sometimes support those departments, and we're not going to do that. But
Do you know or remember, if you do, how your predecessor, Ann, how we did the old Villa Hotel project, and that had, what, 12, 14 units in there of affordable housing? It's all affordable.
yeah, that's all affordable
How
housing.
did that kind of work out? Where did we get the money for that and sort of thing?
I don't know that, and I should talk to Ann Cheney, my predecessor, about that. Maybe she could come in and talk about that. It was a Resources for Community Development project, or it still is, and I think they brought their financing package with them. I don't believe the city put.
Oh, it wasn't a redevelopment money then?
I'll double check, but we've never had much in the way of redevelopment.
Yeah.
Well, the other piece of all this that's very much in flux is, I mean, I only understand like this much about tax incentives, but my general understanding is the federal tax bill could have really significant impact on the financial viability of affordable housing developments. Yeah, getting rid of like lots of the tax credits or making
Lowers
the
the value of
financing
the
more.
tax credits.
Yeah, okay. So anyway, just because there aren't enough issues on the table about this, but so I don't know if, I'm not sure what our end goal should be tonight, but I'm wondering if, you feel like you have enough feedback on things that we would like to continue looking at, or
I'd like to give you whatever you ask for.
ooh, really?
But a starting point, the context for what the big picture is with implementing the housing element, and we go through it on a pretty regular basis to make sure we're doing what we said we're supposed to do. go through the new legislation and give you a properly agendized presentation of the parcel on Cleveland that we're kicking around. And that can all happen in the next month or two.
Okay.
That wouldn't be hard.
So there's definitely some bad news on the horizon, but, you know, with the housing package, I mean, Alameda County did pass a affordable housing bond. SB2 provides some money that's going to be a stream. I think upfront year one, there's supposed to be planning money for affordable housing that we could probably apply for. And then I think SB3 is the bond, another housing statewide. So I mean, hopefully we can get ourselves in a position where we have a game plan where we can actually attract some of those dollars.
That's right.
I don't know exactly what the game plan is, but.
Right.
Another part of the update I should give you is the Alameda County Measure A1, which was approved by the voters a year or two ago. We're working very closely with the county. It's tricky. The way they're setting up the program isn't a perfect fit for Albany. It's really set up for bigger projects that are in the pipeline, that are underfunded, that are ready to go. And there are a bunch of them in Oakland. There are a bunch of them in, you know, Stanley, Andrew, Hayward, bigger cities with bigger projects can spend the money right away and have a good bang for their buck. For us, where we are, we're not competitive when we look at that. And it's, again, that's probably a longer discussion with giving you some of the background on that. But we do have an allocation in that bond measure of $2.5 million or so that's allocated to the city of Albany for us to decide how we want to use it. But we have to use it in the next few years.
Well, so that Cleveland project, that's good.
That may even not come together fast enough, depending
really?
on
Yeah.
how quickly we can pull the pieces together.
Now, so give me, but just based on like the inquiries you've had and people coming in and talking about things, do you feel a sense of urgency in this sense here that we might, if we take a year to get a housing fee into place, will we miss a big project that comes through that we can't assess a housing fee on? I mean, you don't know, but you know, is there anything in the pipe? Is there any reason why you think we ought to really expedite this to get the fee in place before such and such a project hits the counter?
There are a couple of property owners that approach us informally every 6 months or so, and you know, they're thinking about it, and they say, "Wow, this is the time to do it." So I think at some point in the next few years, yes, I think you're going to see a project on San Pablo Avenue. Exactly which parcel, I wouldn't.
Well, I think us discussing this potential fee would make them act pretty
Yeah,
quickly.
they'll be here at your next meeting.
Yeah, right. It'd be self-fulfilling. Yeah.
That's definitely what Oakland's trying to do. They had this tapered-in implementation of the fee to kind of get people in the door early on.
Oh, that's what Oakland, that was their thinking there? Oh, that makes sense.
Scale in over 18 months or so.
Yeah.
Or a year.
I can see that, yeah.
So it's kind of interesting, because the bond measures, I think, are great because we all share the load. And I think otherwise, these impact fees, they're hitting all the newcomers both ways, right? So it just kind of, and we're sitting back, everybody has their own story, but a lot of us have bought when the houses are cheaper, you know, and we're just kind of,
Yeah.
you know, there's got to be a little bit sharing. And so the bonds, I think, do that, bond measures, more so than these impact fees, because obviously you're squeezing out the middle, as you mentioned, the middle person's getting hit the most. And the wealthy people can swing it. It helps out the lower end, and middle end pays higher.
You know, one of the things you could ask for if you wanted to is we could arrange for representatives of the kind of the pros and cons of the various advocacy groups to come talk to you about it. The building industry doesn't like them. Many in the affordable housing community do. And it might be interesting for you to hear from both sides.
I do think that would be helpful once there's some kind of policy that's coalescing. I think inviting like a free-form discussion about what do you think about housing fees sounds kind of like a nightmare to me. But I mean, I guess I would suggest just to kind of bring this, and I don't know if others have major comments this evening, but I think just to like help move things forward, you know, again, for me, I think it would be really helpful to have a presentation that talks about the goals under the housing element for construction of affordable housing and how you see the impact fees playing into that, to help drive, you know, what our focus should be on recommending an approach to those fees. So I guess that's what I would suggest, and then touching on some of the other issues that we've raised this evening about, you know, what are the other sources of funding, and maybe casting a slightly wider net in terms of other comparable cities. Just, again, I know they're all over the place, but just trying to get more data points, I think, about what's out there. That would be my suggestion. I don't know if others have things to add on that.
No, I mean, I like that, and I mean, what I would say is just, I think in general, as sort of maybe a policy guise, I would say that I think I would suggest that we make whatever we come up with, our fees being sort of lower than Berkeley. I think it was I mean, I don't know who said it and at what meeting, but it was this notion that, you know, I don't want to create impact fees that then are going to discourage people from developing in our city, and they'll be like, well, you know, it's cheaper in Berkeley, so we can just go there, or it's more available. And similarly with El Cerrito, depending on what they come up with. And so obviously I wouldn't want to go as high as the max are, and I don't think I'd want to go as high as Berkeley's fees are either, to kind of make us competitive with them. I mean, the other part is, I know when you head up the non-residential fee schedule, I would like to, I mean, ultimately, I think I'd like to have something for all of those categories, but I'd like to make sure that we, even though I don't think the prospect is high of having hotels, I think I'd like to have that so that if, you know, the waterfront ever gets developed, we have something in place so that we can address that, and not sort of leave that as something.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I guess that's kind of my general direction that I'm thinking.
If we have any commercial fee at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, along this kind of wide-ranging discussion, but back to what you were saying, Doug, about accessory dwelling unit, you could also using the money to divide existing house into a couple units, right? That's where you have empty nesters that want to create, that's also a fairly inexpensive way to create. Wasn't there somebody doing a study here that Lonnie?
I think you got a presentation in the housing element phase when we were doing the housing element.
Yeah, that's
Lonnie
right.
Gray,
That was pretty
did.
interesting. Yeah, Lonnie, that's right, that was very
We did.
talked about that.
From Lonnie Gray, that's right, I remember that, yeah. She's sort of an architect who specialized in doing that, yeah. I remember that.
And I'm sure she'd be happy to, you know, at some point, if she
Yeah.
want to hear more about that. she can.
Yeah. Well, thinking about comparables, you know, in a way, I'd say Berkeley is probably our closest comparable in terms of similarity in housing stock and in housing value. Their property taxes are way higher than ours because they've voted themselves so many taxes over them. So maybe we can afford to have some more fees. Got it that way, I don't know. But, yeah.
This is a,
Anyway, I just think that's a close comparable, at least in that important metric.
it's a bit tangential, but back to Commissioner Jenny's original point is, I would like to see some kind of understanding assessment from the development community of why not Albany? You know, what's prohibiting? And I kind of sense we have maybe we have some sense, small parcel size, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But why aren't people coming here? I mean, I'm understanding this El Cerrito is getting some development permits now. I've seen some development in Berkeley, so why not here? So have an economist or somebody go out and talk to a few developers.
And is this?
Susan, she would know right off.
Yeah. I mean, is this also tied to the, and I mean, one of my naive understanding too is that it's not necessarily just the sort of impact fees, but it's the lack of, it's a sort of comprehensive list of things where it's like our parking requirements can be somewhat prohibitive in terms of what they require. And I remember when the gentleman from El Cerrito came and did El Cerrito did the presentation.
On Moss.
Yeah, they had, I mean, they had big reductions in terms of their parking requirements to really get those high-volume development projects in the city. So I think it's things of that and just our limited amount of lots that are available for development, the small lot sizes.
Small lot sizes.
Yeah, yeah.
And not many vacant lots, if any.
Yeah, I think it's like this sort of comprehensive list. I mean, it would be interesting to hear that, but that's just sort of my understanding. And I know the city had that development presentation that Susan participated on, which was an interesting, where they actually took the Mechanics Bank as an exemplary project and went through, you know, the pros and cons of trying to develop that.
Yeah.
And so that's a good sort of reference that I referred to help educate me, at least in terms of it. So I don't know, I mean.
Should we
Yeah. I guess there's no
this
real.
up? I don't know what, we're not like making a motion,
You don't need to
right?
make
Like,
a motion. I think you've given us money to work on, and we'll organize something, and it's probably more than one meeting. And maybe on just a regular pace for the next couple of months. We'll just work through it, and hopefully you get to a point where
One more comment. In summary here, it mentioned that there was the cost of development of a residential unit and the value of the residential unit, if rented, is capped at affordable levels. I didn't find that information in here. So under the analysis, it says the first part of the nexus fee study calculates the affordability gap between the cost of development of a residential unit and the value of the residential unit if rented. That was in here?
Yeah, it is. I'm just not sure I know exactly what page it is, but I
Because
can
that
find
seems
it.
like it does matter. I mean, if you can rent higher in Albany, and it's costs the same to build in Albany as it does in Hayward, you know, wouldn't that matter? It seems like it would.
But if you're trying to build affordable at a certain level, that's going to cap
But for the nexus, the amount on the nexus thing, right?
for the market rate units?
Yeah, for the market rate. Yeah.
Fair enough.
So well, hopefully that has given you enough sort of direction all over the place. My apologies for that, but yeah, hopefully you guys are able to put together. I guess unless there are any other comments on this topic, or if there's anything you want us to specifically direct you for. Okay, I guess with that, next item up is the announcements, communications, discussion. Nothing from staff, anything from commissioners? Okay, our next meeting will be next year, January 10th.
Okay.
all right,
With that, I will call to adjourn tonight's meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
thank you.
Okay.